Russell T Davies, when talking about Midnight, the absolute classic, brilliant episode from 2008, has said it's the kind of episode you should never do a sequel to. He didn't say that in 2008. He said that in 2025 on the extras for The Well. So, yeah, what did we think of this one?
I gotta be honest, I didn't much care for it, even though they put me in the episode.
Yeah, that's true.
Broken and everything.
Really impressive cameo on your part.
So, talking about The Well, Neo, Australia, Ingiga, England, Broken Mirrors, the USA. Gig, how did you feel about The Well?
So, the first time I watched it, I got to the end and I thought, well, there was no part of that where I was bored. I thought that was pretty solid. I thought that was like a 7 out of 10 sort of episode. And I think that was mostly just because, I guess the fact it was coherent kind of carried me through it. Say the actors were given their best effort. There wasn't some obvious point in the episode where the story dropped out. Like there's that big bit in Robot Revolution where there's kind of nothing happening in the middle until Belinda decides to get the plot moving again by summoning the robots, you know? Mm-hmm. But actually, revisiting this episode and thinking about this episode, and just looking at it, what it is, and rewatching it in particular, you do really start to feel how little there is going on. Like, there's really not much of a setting in this story. There's not much of there's not a great deal of drama to this story. Because I think you have the core of it with Aliss, and you get some quite interesting new material for Doctor Who. Like, it's really interesting that she's deaf and the way that Doctor kind of engages with her around that, and the way kind of the Doctor and Belinda try to engage with her. You know, there are some decent tricks played with that, like the little subtitle screens that the people have on them, and how those are used dramatically. But when you look at on the whole thing, I can completely see why someone will watch this and feel like this is soulless, dead, draining, dull. Like, because even just on the level of looking at the location they're in, the production design, it's staggering how little identity there is. And I think that's maybe the core of the whole thing. This story is really struggling to find any sort of identity, which I guess is why they try to give it an injection of midnight juice, hype moments and aura to make up for that. And I don't think it ultimately works at the end of the day. This is a story that's really, I mean, the worst thing you can say about it is it's bland.
Yeah. This feels, I hate to rag on one of your favorite Doctor Who writers, Neil, but this really feels Saywardian in the bad way. This feels like a callback to that era of Doctor Who when they were just coasting on decades-old successes and desperately trying to dredge up any nostalgia they could to try and bring the audience back long after they'd tuned out.
It seems like the vibe of this story, the attempt to imitate this slick sci-fi horror blockbuster with spacesuits that RTD overtly compares to cinematic ones, Marvel ones, and an entire horror premise and storyline that could just be from a generic sci-fi horror film. That impulse feels like not a wise one for Doctor Who, to be honest, because if you're just trying to do an unreconstructed, pretty much imitation of stuff that you can find bloody anywhere else, then it begs the question, what's the actual point? You know? And I guess that maybe is partly related to how in the Sayward years, I guess, almost this effort to, I'm not dragging that era too much.
I will.
But I feel like there's probably something in that, this idea to make it more bloody and violent and gritty. It feels like it's trying to make Doctor Who compete somehow with stuff that's completely different, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Different is really the word here, because I know it wasn't originally, well, there's two writers on this, which is interesting. We have a new writer and then Russell as the other writer. We'll get into that. But I know the episode wasn't originally intended as a midnight sequel or anything, but I can think about little else because that's what the episode is and that's what so much of the talk about it is and the promotion of it is. But like the host of Doctor Who Unleashed puts it in the behind the scenes for this episode, and he puts it like it's a good thing. In Midnight, everyone's stuck on a space bus, but in The Well, they're free to run around like action heroes. And Midnight's all about, psychological tension and really kind of digging into the 10th Doctor's character and how does that character work in a situation where he can't get out of, and there's no companion there to kind of normalize him and humanize him. And it's this really dark, misanthropic exploration of how humans turn on each other and group think and all that sort of thing. And this episode is like wire work of people getting flung across a room. And I just feel like the comparison Russell makes in turning it into a sequel just does it absolutely no favors. I think if this wasn't a Midnight sequel, I would just think that was a bit of a mid-gun episode. I probably won't remember this one, but as is, it's just like, it's inviting so many negative comparisons, at least to me. Did you guys feel the same, or do you think it held the legacy of Midnight?
I strongly feel the same. I feel like what would be a good comparison? It would be like if The Rebel Flesh Almost People two-parter, if that was a sequel to Midnight, you know?
Yeah.
It has basically as much to do with Midnight as this episode does. I mean, I can see why you would think, hey, let's make this sort of action horror episode, this thriller episode, you know, let's try to tie that to Midnight, because, I mean, it's a style of horror that Doctor Who is... Gig, earlier you mentioned that it feels inappropriate for Doctor Who. It feels, to me more, it feels like so central to, like, so elemental to Doctor Who, this ancient base under siege formula that's totally unfucked with. It's just, it's so disappointing to see. Last year I said some nice things about 73 yards, and now I just don't know what to believe anymore. I can't wait for 74 yards, where fucking Roger Ap William turns out to be the master, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, Kate gets her own 73 yards, and it's a sequel to, like, The Demons or something. I think it is, like, the way you describe it, elemental. I mean, it's basically the bare bones, the barest bones of bare bones you could possibly do. I think it seems almost consciously that way. You have a generic rock planet, like the planet deliberately designed to be the blandest, most blank slate thing imaginable.
Just a gravel quarry with a sci-fi desktop over top of it.
Generic space marines or whoever they are, and just like generic soldier figures. Yeah, like there's no particular distinguishing feature of this, I guess, setting that they're in, or these characters, these people. It really is just generic future. I mean, with the exception, I guess, of the deaf inclusion aspect, which pretty much the only swipe this episode makes at having its own identity at all.
Yeah.
And because it would just be like a mid-episode, but I think the injection of this Midnight stuff is such a plain act of desperation that it makes it into something actively quite embarrassing and humiliating. And it's not really... Do you mind? I don't feel like it's making Midnight worse, really. I don't think it really can. I don't think it has the power to do that. It's just making this episode worse by, you know, like you say, inviting the unflattering comparisons.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's not like... before I said that Midnight was sort of special, and I probably implied that it was like inviolate, that you can't really fuck with Midnight, but you can fuck with Midnight. They've poked at Midnight over the years. There's been episodes that are like the same, you know, variations on the premise, or episodes that you can compare it to, episodes that you can theory craft from. This is like the least you could do. Genuinely, this is... It's there's not even any diamonds on the planet's surface. I don't know what else to say. The planet is not even made out of diamonds.
I mean, they make a point of saying the diamonds all got removed.
Yeah.
And that's how we can't tell it's Midnight anymore, because they got rid of the one distinguishing feature of the setting of Midnight to turn it into a generic rock planet indistinguishable from every other planet. So they could do the epic reveal where it's like, oh my god, this is Midnight. It's the Midnight entity. And then it has precisely no impact on the rest of the story.
And of course, the perfect way to reveal that in one of the most well-acted and well-written scenes in Russell T Davies' Who. We don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is! We don't know what it is. Oh, my old head. What am I not remembering about? We don't know what it is.
It is a little funny that the reveal for this monster that we don't know what it is we don't know what it is.
Is there something I'm missing? Is there actually something I don't know there about the phrase "we don't know what it is" that somehow connects it to Midnight, or is it literally just is it actually just what it looks like the fact that they don't know
that we don't know what the Midnight entity was? I assumed.
What's another thing where I didn't know what it is?
He could just have easily have decided it's about the Listen entity or something. I don't know.
I have a theory there.
Is the theory that they're the same thing? I hope not.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that as that's not my headcanon, but I believe that there's a how do I put this? Even though they might not literally be the same fictional entities, they're still the same sort of presence in the program. They're, the strange, otherworldly thing lurking at the extremity of experience. Same thing with the no things in Wild Blue Yonder.
Yonder, yeah.
I think you mentioned how over the years they've poked at Midnight a bit, and it just put me in mind of Listen, and I think, Listen is more of a sequel to Midnight than The Well is, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Not because Listen tries to bring back the Midnight entity and show David Tennant from Midnight, but because in being a story about an entity that you can't really know the existence of, but using that as ultimately a device to explore people and their own paranoias, their own fears and behavior, and even in a way being kind of the opposite of Midnight, because Listen is ultimately a positive thing. It's about embracing your fears of the dark and so on, and confronting them and being strong and brave. Whereas Midnight is a quite pessimistic, misanthropic depiction of humans turning on each other. Those two things are still related to each other, even if they're disagreeing on what's the most important thing to tell the story about. Right? They are in the same kind of vein. They are using these abstract high concepts to explore people.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas this story's treatment of the Midnight entity is just as a spooky monster. So it couldn't be further apart from what actually from what Midnight was actually doing. And I think the way this story came into being, RTD has kind of talked about how he was originally trying to work on an episode about the Orisha, kind of these kind of mythological figures, and I feel like that must have been the origin of the collaboration with a co-writer, Sharma Angel Wellfall, but it just wasn't working for whatever reason, and they ended up. It was a script that needed rescuing. Basically, it wasn't working for whatever reason. So it becomes very explicit that this whole Midnight shit was just piped into it to try and get it to work where it wasn't otherwise working, and that's why it feels so poorly matched, so unfitting, so random, and just so awkward.
Yeah.
RTD says, I think this is really interesting because of what later in the season the story, the engine is about. But the reason they went off from the Orisha in this episode was jamming them into, well, he doesn't say jamming, but putting them into his supernatural Doctor Who-y pantheon thing felt a bit off because those are real gods. Those are gods from the real human world, and alienating them up, I assume, wasn't feeling respectful, so they backed off from that, which is just interesting because I think Engine kind of does that in a way that I think works. But instead, Midnight entity with its freaky little head.
What do you guys think about the Midnight entity having a physical form?
I want to just draw a distinction here, because when you're first seeing it just popping kind of like a smudge behind someone's head, that could almost be, you could almost picture that as being an illusion or a projection that it's showing people rather than a tangible thing. But then later on, when everybody's running away from it down the corridor, possibly one of the shittest moments of the episode, the Doctor's like, I want to see it. And he turns around and you just see this blob thing slowly crawling around the corner. Why did they do that? I really don't understand why they did that at all. That is very much trying to locate it as a thing with a physical body that can just chase you. I know in Midnight, the original episode, there is that moment where the pilots talk about catching a glimpse of something moving towards it. But again, that's just a suggestion, right? It's not trying to look, it's not actually putting a black smudge on the screen and saying this is the body of the creature and you've got to run away from it before it catches up to you. I don't really care about the head thing popping up behind people's heads so much. I don't really care that they modelled like a prosthetic head to give the actor something to look at. Like I'm sort of whatever on that, but I don't think the handling of it is very effective overall. I think clearly they were trying to play it as this thing with a body, particularly at the end there, and that was stupid.
Yeah. I especially wish they hadn't just uploaded the pictures of what the person was wearing on set.
Yeah.
Like, right afterwards. That was a huge... Like, they didn't make that mistake with Listen. They made you wait for that shit. The way I felt about it, I was fine with how it seems like when it's peeking around Aliss's head, it feels like it's a subjective viewpoint thing. Like, we see it from Belinda's perspective, but we don't see what the other people are seeing, even though they're clearly also seeing it. So I was fine with that. I think giving it an objective form at the end was shaky, and then showing as much of it as they did was really just a huge misstep. It would have been fine if they had cut it down to just like the shot from the shadows where like you see the shape moving in front of Shooty. That was pretty creepy. But the actual, over his shoulder, seeing its little piranha plant head poking out in the shadows, I didn't care for that.
I just think it's fun. Like, I don't begrudge him doing it, but so the hours the episode came out, all over everywhere, we would get these funny pictures of like Midnight Entity clowning around with Stephen Powell and like doing silly movements and everything. And it's just like you could theoretically go on a Twitter the day the episode come out and see like a picture of the Midnight Entity, clowning around with the guys on Unleashed before you actually saw the episode. Which, like, I did. Yeah. It's fun to show the behind the scenes stuff, but I just feel like that was poorly judged.
When I first watched this, and Mirrors, you mentioned the subjective kind of view, like it could have been interpreted like that. And when they were first at that bit, when Belinda was first seeing the head, and everyone was getting paranoid about it, like there's something there, I thought what it was going to be was that the entity was just going to show them these fleeting images, and that was going to basically manipulate the humans into killing each other. Like I thought it was going to be like that, and that would have been, I guess, vaguely in line with how it works in Midnight, which is that it gets the humans to attack each other and turn on each other by just tricking them, basically just doing an illusion. But it didn't go that way at all.
That is kind of what it's doing. That's how it killed everybody except for her.
I mean, but also it's picking them up on wires.
Yeah, that was the problem I had.
That's kind of the problem, yeah.
That was the fucking nadir of Russell T Davies 2 era so far for me. I mean, I know I talked a big game about Empire of Death, but I guess in the end I never cared about Pyramids of Mars as much as I cared about Midnight.
I think the wires thing is, I think it's a failure of what they're going for, because I think what they want to suggest is that this force that is superhumanly powerful is just like smacking these, like splatting these people, like utterly wiping them out. But because it's done on wires, you see like the arc of the gravitational arc of them going up and down. Like it has too much weight to it. It doesn't actually look like they've been swatted by some unfathomable cosmic force. It just looks like they've been lifted up a bit and then dropped.
It's incredibly comical, is what it is.
Yeah, it looks funny. It looks funny. That's a real shame. I think in that sequence where Cassio, the kind of asshole soldier guy, is inadvertently getting them all killed because he's panicking, I think if the death effect had been better, I think that sequence would have been really quite effective.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the idea of him like inadvertently, accidentally killing everyone, that could have been so creepy and fucked up and tragic. And I love the fact that Shaya, like his superior, has to basically kill him. You have to send her message to Aliss to get her to turn around, and that causes him to die. Oh, that's actually a good idea, like for a scene. But really, the death effect spoils it completely.
Yeah, that's the one part of the episode that reliably feels like Midnight did. Like it's playing with the people's, with their paranoia and everything. And then they just fucking gut it with this terrible effect. It looks like everybody's having a lot of fun filming it. And Midnight does not look like everyone's having a lot of fun filming it. That is probably the number one thing about Midnight that makes it so effective even today, is that everybody looks really unhappy to be making it.
Yeah, it's very intense and unpleasant, I think, is Midnight. They're all trapped in this tiny room, and I suppose it feels theatrical in a way that an actual play would feel, when everyone is like stuck in this room kind of sweating it out. Whereas, yeah, with the well, it's just I feel like it's trying to be the Aliens to Midnight's Alien, but it's more like the what's the most insulting comparison you can make it?
Alien Resurrection.
Yeah.
That's what I have in my notes anyway. Listen was already aliens.
The monster, the entity, like in Midnight, it's not really what the episode is about. It's more like it's what thrusts the episode into what it is. Like the most of the episode is the drama between everyone on the train and the tension mounting between people on the train and how they get worse and worse with each other and how the Doctor loses his grip on the situation. That's like the actual drama in the episode, and that's what's exciting about it. And that's mostly what's happening in the episode. It's like the monster is kind of it's just what's propelling the actual story, which is got all its own ideas about what it's doing with 10th Doctor's character, and what it's doing with RTD's misanthropic views on people. And this episode, I feel like it's much more like the monster is the monster, and the episode's kind of about the monster, which is funny since the monster was like a late addition into the story. But I feel like we have the drama between the Code Red and the mutiny and all that, but it's all just so centered around what are we doing around this monster, and I don't feel like it's really going anywhere. I agree that the deaf character is the most interesting part of it, but I think you can also tell that that's a late addition because it's not...
Came about in casting, right?
Yeah, it came in later. I like the idea of like someone's way they interface with the world kind of rubbing up against how an alien evil thing works. Like I like the idea that it couldn't have as much of an effect on her. I think that's interesting. And I wish the episode kind of did more with that, but it doesn't really. And all the little touches about deafness I thought were interesting, like the little slip-ups characters make and like how the Doctor tries to communicate and doesn't realize she can tell what he's doing, and the hologram subtitle, all that is really cool and interesting. It makes...
Like when they try to hide stuff from her by turning their backs. Really good scene.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I think is the most interesting and like exciting and just fascinating about the episode. But it's not really in there much. It's mostly about there's this scary monster and it's going to fling us around. And then just the kind of traditional, it's like bad Saywood drama of, and this...
Oh, now that you said that, remembering how the Midnight Entity actually works in that episode, that would be very interesting if you had a deaf character, because then what would the possessed character be signing? I don't know. That's an interesting thought, completely ignored in this. Was she just sitting in that room for 15 days, for like 2 weeks, right next to the dead person?
Don't know. She may have been wandering around, I guess, but yeah.
Because she says she's been there for 2 weeks, and that all this happened 2 weeks ago, and yeah, she's just like sitting across from her
dead best friend.
Dead best friend, yeah. Stupid fucking TV show. God. There's
a big theory I saw a lot, not so much the day of the episode, but like the days after, I think, when people were mulling it over, that Aliss or the Midnight Entity is doing like a big Xanatos gambit of like, actually all along the entity was Aliss, and that's, things don't add up because why were they sitting in the room like that for so long? I don't really see that.
Oh, it was bad on purpose. I see.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't really see, I get why people are doing it, because I think there are kind of holes or just things that are kind of weak to plug with that. I don't really think it's what the episode's doing, and the episode ends on like the negative twist anyway of it getting out. So I think it's kind of convoluting it past a point it's already making, but I kind of get the impulse.
It feels like a meta step too far to imply that the entire structure of saving the damsel in distress from the evil monster is actually a disguise for the damsel in distress being the evil monster. We're creating a fake Doctor Who episode to hide the real one in it, and it's like this is, you're getting too ambitious here. I feel like when you're piling that much.
That's a good premise.
They've done it before.
It's never really worked that well, but they've tried it. And what I was saying is, it feels like Moffat really fucked us over with that moment in the Angels two-parter.
Flesh and Stone with the jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the jacket. That moment worked perfectly fine in context, even though it was a little like, whatever. This is just poor storytelling. It's just not very well written. It's just not very well thought out. The Midnight Entity clearly just escapes in the airlock anyway. The thing says there's 4 people in it when there's only 3. I went back and checked that like 3 times to make sure.
To be honest, I wasn't even keeping track of how many people are actually in there because the various soldier characters sort of blurred into a paste for me, so I wasn't really able to keep track of them.
Yeah, the soldiers all just have numbers. Cassio and Shea are the only ones with names, as far as I can tell. But she says, "You two take Aliss through the airlock, and those 2 troopers go into the airlock with Aliss. And then as the airlock's closing, it says like 4 people inside." I don't know. That part was cute. I noticed people noticing it, and that drove me to go back and check it out myself. Doesn't really go anywhere in the end, because the way that they have the new effect of the Midnight Entity is just that people look at you suspiciously, which again feels like it could build on the themes of paranoia and misanthropy, but it doesn't.
Yes, see that ending, before we move on, that ending coda where the woman looks at her weirdly and it's like, oh no, it got out. I feel like that was so close to being something I'd have liked more. I think if it was a suggestion that she's going to permanently live with the paranoia whenever someone like seems to look at her oddly, she's going to think, oh my god, is it with me?
Yeah.
I think that would be a fair idea for an ending, but I think they lean on it too heavily here. Like, they play the creepy whispering effect afterwards, and they honestly go play it like the thing is actually there, and that's the thing. And I feel like they lose the ambiguity there, so it actually just feels like a generic, oh no, the monster got out, rather than a more subtle of this trauma is going to haunt you for the rest of your life, which I think would have been more nuanced, while also allowing for some ambiguity about whether it got out. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Ambiguity. This on the one of the behind the scenes things, RTD said something. I know you would have loved this as well, Gig, where he says it was just time to put Shooty and Varada in those Marvel style spacesuits.
Was it?
I'm needed. Marvel style spacesuits are needed.
Also, why were the spacesuit, like, how do they have the same helmets and stuff as these guys? I hate to be like a plot hole guy, but that actually confused me on my first watch. How do they end up in the exact same suits?
Excuse me, Davies, why is the suit not baggy and orange? Okay? We have all been watching this show all along. We know how this is supposed to work.
I mean, I guess it has to be because the TARDIS or Vindicator, wherever the fuck, took them to a certain place, and they knew what kind of. I think they must have had some like information in terms of what kind of like military or whatever kind of operation they'd landed in. Therefore, they had the suits that matched it. But again, it reads really, really strangely.
There has to be like a psychic wardrobe. That's the only explanation.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, like what that might become canon.
I kind of like another mild amount of praise I have for the episode. I kind of like that the Devil's Cord shot has become like a tradition for the show now.
Yeah, I agree.
The Doctor and companion are gonna dress funny. Then they play a pop song and have them walk up there, and then
it's fun.
Clark Kent out of there. That part's fun.
I like that too.
The choice of needle drop this time had me raising my eyebrows, because I feel like the fact it was Britney Spears' Toxic, I mean, that's, to be honest, like that's a really old song at this point. That's an RTD1 needle drop, which I suppose you could say about this whole episode, really. But it just felt jarring to me. Like, you have an opportunity to play a pop song in your episode, and you just pick a really, really old one that's already been in the show like 20 fucking years ago.
Literally.
It just seems like you're missing, actually, the fundamental pleasure of doing this. I do question that.
I think with that and with everything, this episode, it feels like a throwback to the first Davies era, but mostly to, like, this is going to sound mean, it doesn't feel like a throwback to the good parts of the Russell T Davies era. You know what I mean? This feels like if you threw the Satan Pit and End of the World and God Help Us Midnight into a blender, and they very specifically were destroyed by the blender. You know, this is what you would get out. I'm not feeling it. You know.
It feels like misremembering the RTD one in some ways. I think part of it is how, I guess, the community and fans and people in general have sort of remembered it, because, you know, when RTD made that decision, oh, the thing in this episode, it's so much like the Midnight entity. I must just make the Midnight entity into this story. And at the end of the day, if your takeaway from Midnight is, oh, what was the entity? Wow, that entity in that episode was so cool. I can't believe that episode was about such a crazy, spooky entity. That's actually not got anything to do with Midnight the episode. That's not what Midnight the episode was about. That's not what made Midnight the episode interesting or memorable or acclaimed or good. Right? The substance of Midnight is that it's an extremely tightly wound, kind of bottle script about characters going kind of insane on each other because of this thing that copies their language, right? It's kind of a linguistic game of a script. It's an experimental script. It's an experimental piece of writing, and that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it stand out. And if your takeaway from it is the spooky monster, if your idea of following it up is following up on the spooky monster, then you have actually just misremembered what that episode was, what Midnight was. It's like the wrong part of that episode has persisted in collective memory. So now we've got the Midnight entity taking precedence over Midnight the story, Midnight the script, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. It's not hard to see why. It's, you know, it's like a lot of good Doctor Who monsters. It's a very classic, like, playground game you could play. And those kids, that was 20 years ago, so, you know, those kids are all grown up, and God help us, probably watching with kids of their own. Oh, who am I kidding? They're not watching this. Nobody's watching this bullshit. But again, I cannot help but think of the fact that in his attempt to bring back the Midnight entity, he's clearly just riffing on Listen, which again does not do this episode any favors. And I really don't know what to say, honestly. This doesn't feel like the product of the same mind that was responsible for a lot of really good television, except in the fact that he's also been responsible for a lot of really bad television.
I think it's really telling how little impact the Midnight connection reveal actually has on the story. If you actually look at what it amounts to within the story, okay, it's a motive for the Doctor to run back from the control room to where Belinda and co are, because he's realised how bad this thing really is. And he has like a brief conversation with it where he's like, what are you? Tell me what you are. What are you doing? Why are you doing this, my old friend? Give me the lore. Oh my god, this creepy thing, it knows my name. Blah, blah, blah. And then that's it. Like, it's not really relevant again. It's just back to being a normal creepy monster story. Like, the link with Midnight does not actually transform or change the shape of the story in any specific way. You could do this story almost identically without the Midnight link. So,
and it would be better for it.
Yes, it would be better for it, truth be told. It would be less embarrassing. What it ends up being is that when the Doctor is having that attempted dialogue with it, when he's just staring at him being like, what are you? Tell me what you are. And of course, it gets no answer. It just feels awkwardly like the show, in the sense that because this supposed question of what the entity is one that has lingered from RTD1, in bringing that question into the text of the show and having the Doctor ask it like it matters, it just feels like the show trying to ask its own past how to be successful. Like asking RTD1, how were you so good? How did people like you so much? How did you have episodes as acclaimed as Midnight in it? How did you do it? What was your secret? Tell me. It's just, but in asking that question, it is physically not understanding. It's completely missing the point. It's asking the wrong question. Almost, it's showing how little it understands about what RTD1 got right, purely by trying to evoke that glory, trying to bask in the shadow of RTD1 in this incredibly superficial way.
Yeah, when everyone knows the answer to the success was that cocaine was just better back then.
This is an annoying fan thing, but I know what the episode should have been. First of all, I think it should have been maybe episode 2 instead of episode 3, because Lux diffuses the potential Belinda Doctor drama quickly and they get all happy with each other and whatnot. Robot Revolution has, I'm not one of your adventures, I don't want to travel with you, I'm stuck. You know what I mean? It kind of it sets up a potential tension between the characters that could have been interesting. This episode also doesn't really do anything with that tension. The season in general isn't really. But this episode is at least ostensibly about, or paranoia, and interpersonal drama in like the say Wardy side characters. I don't know how exactly you would do it, but I feel like couldn't you have had this episode like externalize Belinda's lack of trust or tension with the Doctor and have that play out in the dramas around the monster and like the different sides of the team going in there to deal with it and to, you know, pit them against each other a bit and really get into trust issues and all that sort of stuff. I feel like if this episode is about people not trusting each other and getting tense with each other, and the Robot Revolution premiere kind of set that up with these two, we diffused that really quickly and then we didn't really use it in this, which just seems like obviously bad to me.
He even gets her shot this episode.
Yeah, and this episode would be an extremely intense kind of follow-up on this thing of like, well, you need to get me home. We were not going on adventures. I promise I will get you home. I'll keep you safe. And they have the most intense, traumatic adventure ever where she gets shot. I think the trouble with making it episode 2, I think a reason they didn't, is that Belinda needs to actually like leave the TARDIS for it to happen. And it's like, why would she? Like in Lux, there's kind of a basic justification. Like it's 1950, it's Earth. It's a kind of familiar environment. There's a reason for her to like get up and go out there and see what it's like. There's no reason for her to just put on a spacesuit and like plunge herself into immediate immense danger if she's been told she's going to go home. Like she doesn't need to come out of the TARDIS is the thing. Like she'll only do that if she's actually been convinced to go on all these stupid adventures, which notionally happens in Lux. That's
a tension in character motivation that the show has tried to move away from since, you know, the fucking Ian and Barbara era. I mean, it's a good underlying motivation. I have to get home, so could you please get me home? But it means that it means that you have companions who, instead of driving the story forward, are like digging their feet in and trying to get away from the story at all times. It's not even a properly adversarial relationship, which would at least be something interesting. I mean, that's one of the few good things about the Davison era's massive cast, is that there were so many different personalities and motivations ping-ponging off each other. This is just, I don't know. It's a character motivation that does not marry well to the format of the show since it came back, especially.
I mean, in this episode, what they kind of do instead of any particular 15 Belinda dynamic character arc growth stuff or tension like that, what they have instead is arc clues. So you have the Doctor and Belinda independently discovering that Earth has been deleted and that no one remembers Earth or the human race anymore. I kind of hated that stuff being in the episode. It just felt like it was just, as much as, okay, they're trying to set up a plot point for a future episode. I feel like, again, if you're trying to compete with Midnight, you shouldn't be wasting time on this shit. Midnight spends about 2 seconds teasing its arc storyline because you have a shot of Rose Tyler on the TV screen. You know, this episode has entire scenes where it's like, oh my god, they don't remember the Earth. And then at the end, this annoyed me the most. The TARDIS scene at the end, where it's 15 and Belinda, she's recovering from being shot. They don't talk about what's happened to them particularly. They don't reflect on, like, remember the ending of Midnight where the Doctor is talking to Donna and, you know, Donna goes molto bene and the Doctor's like, don't do that, don't. And that just, it's this quiet ending where we see how haunted he is by what's happening. In this episode, the ending scene is like, Doctor, they didn't remember the Earth, what's happened, where's this arc storyline going to go? And the Doctor's like, I don't know. And that's it. Like, it's just so much weaker and worse. And it, of course, doesn't really amount to anything. There's not much drama in there. It's just a mystery box. It's just a box with a big question mark on it, and you're not going to see it opened until like for a few weeks. So it's just so much lesser of a thing to put in your script, in your drama. It's not feeding into the main drama of the story or the episode or the characters at all.
Yeah. Although now that you mention season 4 story arcs, I suppose thanks to this episode, we can now retroactively say that Midnight is about something on your back.
Oh yeah, I suppose, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Maybe we could call this a sequel to Turn Left instead of a sequel to Midnight. I suppose it might be, maybe the entity is just one of the trickster's bug things, just perches on people. Whatever.
It looks kind of buggy.
There's a kind of randomish thing. I don't know if you guys will really... This connection might seem tenuous to you, too, but...
Nothing's too tenuous for me.
The Marvel spacesuit thing, and then it's a very gun kind of, like, it's literally about... It's got lots of guns in it and shooting and stuff and violence and whatnot. It's like a very kind of masculine-ish episode in that way. More than any other, I think, episode of, like, the shooty era. It's got me thinking about this comment Russell made last year, which I saw, it got paraphrased and it went around a fair bit, but it's about why the Sonic looks like a computer mouse or a TV. It's not a TV remote. That's too phallic. It's like a mouse now, isn't it? Yeah. So his justification for that, when he was asked about it by an interviewer, was that was largely me. I love that new Sonic, the new Doctor for 2024. I worry that sometimes the old Sonic starts to look like a gun, like a weapon that gets pointed like a weapon, and I wanted to just cool that down and check that out. That works brilliantly in an action-adventure show, but actually, let's just take the heat off that. Little boys running around the yard playing with that. There's other ways to do it, and I think this is a thing of beauty now. I just thought it was interesting because this episode feels to me like a little pew-pew episode, and the Sonic's in it, and I don't know. What do you think of the Sonic thing in the context of this episode and in general?
It makes sense to have the Doctor as sort of the figure who's in opposition to the macho shooting guns around kind of action adventure story. And that's not necessarily taken away from by the fact that so many Doctor Who episodes are macho action adventure stories with people shooting guns around and being chased by monsters. It's by some measures about half of the TV show. And that's fine. That's part of the, sort of the inherent push and pull of the program, is to have the frockish twee character getting thrust into these ridiculous situations. And you mentioned the Marvel-esque nature of the spacesuits in that respect. I guess I'm fine with that idea that Doctor Who is in some way trying to be in conversation with sort of the sci-fi adventure superhero craze that we've been in for God knows how long now. The fact that they've made the Midnight entity even more of a playground game now than it used to be, because kids are going to be running around, I assume, assuming children even watch this crap anymore, would probably still be running around with their TV remote or whatever as the sonic screwdriver. And I don't feel like it's really been that big of a change, to be honest with you. That's what I'm getting at here. When I see the new Sonic, instead of seeing like how a lot of people compare the old Sonics to lightsabers, lightsaber hilts or magic wands, the new Sonic just seems more like a Star Trek phaser to me. It's not necessarily held like a gun, but it still seems to be used like a gun.
I think RTD's comments there suggest an attempt to orient the Doctor less around violence and guns and all those things like that. But I think the trouble is, I think that the problem is that's kind of been a bit of a superficial gesture, because as we can see elsewhere in this season, in episodes like Lucky Day or later on Stellar Song Contest, the show is not actually really making that much of a push to differentiate itself, in my opinion. I mean, you've got some episodes that are a bit different, like Story in the Engine, which is very anti the whole adversarial thing. It's very everyone hold hands and hug at the end of that story. But yeah, I think like elsewhere, there's still this push for the Doctor to be this dark, edgy. If you push me too hard, I'll go crazy on you. I'm violent and dangerous. So it just feels to me, like a superficial thing that sounded quite good, but has not actually wormed its way into the fundamental ethos of how the program is made now. I would like the show to be more different from how it's been. And I think kind of these window dressing aspects, like redesigning the Sonic, are kind of not really the kind of interesting change.
Did this feel like a none? Like, could you feel another writer in this?
I could feel too many hands. It felt like the rewrite episodes we used to have back in the day. Not in a very good way. It feels like it's about very little, or what it is about, it's only barely about, you know?
That's a good way of putting it. It feels maybe like RTD writing away from his style, like trying to make himself not sound like RTD a little bit. Like, maybe. I feel like some aspects of it, like Aliss and some of the things she says. I mean, I love her line, you think it crawled its way out of hell to get to me. Like, that whole bit felt kind of, I mean, this is all very vague. Like, I don't have like a precise analysis of like the language here, but she felt like a character he could have penned a little bit. But on the whole, the episode feels like it's downplaying, I guess, the poetry, or like generally the fun, even if it's not always good fun, that RTD tends to have in his scripts.
Yeah, his more action adventure scripts tend to be, I don't know, more globe-trotty than this. Even though they aren't really. But, if that makes any sense, I don't know. I'm thinking of, like, End of the World,
yeah,
the Mr. Saxon trilogy. With this one, it feels like, learning that it's sort of the result of an episode that fell through, that makes a lot of sense. Because what this does feel a lot like is episodes like, well, that's also true of the original Midnight, isn't it? That it was a hasty rewrite when an original idea fell through.
Yeah.
Maybe that's really what he meant when he said that this episode was clearly Midnight, so might as well lean into it.
Well, Midnight was a case of him replacing like an episode that fell through entirely with his own new thing, I guess, and responding to constraints. I guess, like, we need a sort of bottle episode at this point in the schedule. I don't know. Whereas this feels like him, rather than completely abandoning the script, him just trying to... I think the way he describes the process of arriving at putting the Midnight entity in it, he was looking at what he had, so an entity that was playing games with people and being really evil, and we don't know what it is, and he was like, oh, of course, why pretend this is something else? Of course it's the Midnight entity, let's lean into that. Yeah? And that's kind of how he describes it in the behind the scenes and stuff. And I find that a bit strange when he says that, why pretend this is something else? It's like, it's fictional, Davies. It's all pretend. You can pretend it's whatever you want. You don't have to. It's not actually, like, yeah, I feel like his justification there is a bit shaky, to be honest with you.
I guess I still don't really know that much about what this, what was this even supposed to be about? Like, you said the Orisha, I don't really know anything about them.
I think what happened was, like, they were doing an episode based on these gods that I think Shuti had wanted to have an episode revolving around that. He mentioned that. Yeah,
West African gods. Yeah.
But then, of course, like Neo, like you said earlier, RTD was thinking, actually, this handling of them isn't very respectful. Let's take them out of this. Because I guess there was going to be some episode where they were, I don't know, the antagonists or something, and they were bending reality and doing shit like that. So once they were removed, you still had an intangible antagonist who's bending reality and making nasty stuff happen, but it has no particular identity. It's not anything specific. You just have a bad thing, a blob. And I guess that's how you get to, okay, let's make it the Midnight thing. Like, at some point in that process, it was, we decided to set it in space or have boring soldier people around it. But I think that's a general chain. I think you have Orisha story that falls through, then evil entity story that doesn't have like a premise, then you have Midnight clone thing. See, the thing is, when he talks about how, this is the kind of story you should never do a sequel to, so that's where we went, right to that. He's kind of alluding to the perversity of doing the thing that you should never do, as supposedly an appealing thing. The trouble is, the perversity only really pays off if you actually have the confidence and the gusto to try and dethrone Midnight, or at least meaningfully dialogue with it. which this era doesn't have the source. So it comes off like it's in dire need of its own shocking ideas and has to borrow them from other eras of the program.
I don't know. The original feels like such a different animal to this. This doesn't seem like it's really playing with the same deck of cards, even, let alone the same fucking game.
Why? This episode was pretty well received from what I can see. Why?
Well, it's proper sci-fi Doctor Who. Like back when we were kids.
Yeah, it doesn't have the cringe moments or like camp or like silliness or frippery that is so hated.
Mm-hmm. All the daffiness and idiosyncrasies are gone.
Yeah, it has this sort of a Me Too sort of homogenous effect. Like you can just, it really is just kind of imitating these slick sort of horror sci-fi blockbusters set on spaceships and stuff. And the concept of the monster feels like something you could see in Hollywood. Like, oh, don't go behind it, or the Candyman, or the thing will get you. Yeah, that kind of thing like that. Yeah, those kind of game-like enemies, they're pretty big in horror films at this point. And
popular in Doctor Who. You can't really put that entirely on horror films. But it's second screen content. That's what this is. That's what this episode is second screen content.
Yeah, the anonymity of the whole thing, like the look and feel of it, and the almost conscious genericness of it, like the characters who are in it and the setting that they're in, the way they're dressed, the way they act, kind of the way they behave, everything about it feels almost studied to be as bland as possible. And I guess that almost gives it this weird aura of legitimacy for some people, maybe, like just the fact that it looks serious, it looks like it's taking itself very seriously. So that translates to actual seriousness. I think maybe we're being a little bit unfair, because I think it's not like the performances in the episode are bad or anything like that. Like it's doing the pretty bland things in a way that is mostly pretty competent, I think. Like characters looking really scared for their lives, or the Belinda's horror when she realizes she's going to have to be shot. Like it's intense situations, and they're not like badly realized in particular. They just aren't enormously interesting.
It's pretty good. I imagine it's pretty good Doctor Who if you don't watch very much Doctor Who. Like, earlier I mentioned the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People. When I first started watching the show like regularly with Series 6, so for a long time, I really, really liked those episodes. I still have a soft spot for them, even though they are functionally identical to most of the rest of the show. It's Who by numbers is what it is.
Yeah, you kind of have sort of one interesting idea to distinguish it, like the gangers in that case, the ganger doctor, Matt Smith opposite himself, and that's the quirky element in a story that is otherwise pretty generic. Yeah,
it's just that this one doesn't have, I think, as interesting of a gimmick as the original Midnight did. Leaving aside the atmosphere of Midnight, which was what really made that episode so powerful, just the creepiness of it and how it worked was part of what made that. It's not just that I'm not saying the memorable monster is the only reason that Midnight was popular, but I'm saying that it all went together really well. And this one, it feels more like the only part of this episode where I feel like they just touched the sauce, where they sprinkled in a little bit of the flavor, was when she's explaining how it works, and she says, and if this was, and the doctor says, so if it were a clock face, you would die at midnight. That should have been the reveal, like if they're gonna have it.
I kind of feel like the mythos link in this story, if you took it out and it was just an episode about another sort of horrible entity, as much as it wouldn't make this episode super amazing or like a great deal better, I think that would still at least allow this version of the show, this story, this era, to have its own concept, its own antagonist, its own premise, its own thing, distinct, something else for us to wonder about and think about. I think just this impulse to connect it all and make it tacked on to something else, I think diminishes it.
Yeah. like I keep thinking of how people talk about where have all the iconic monsters gone in Doctor Who, and part of it is that they just don't make them as much as they used to, and they could have tried with this one.
Yeah, that's the thing. They could have actually put in the effort to try and make this like a new classic, like a modern classic. But instead, they just wanted the clickbait of having fucking David Tennant archive clips play in the episode. It's really, really shallow. What do you guys think of that moment where he's talking to, the entity is talking to him, and Ncuti's like, "It knows my name," and then there's kind of another moment shortly before he breaks off and he's worked out how to defeat the thing. There's another moment where after he says it knows his name, he's still staring sort of at it or past it or whatever, and he looks like he's hearing something even worse. Like he seems to have a physical reaction, like, oh, sort of like that.
Yeah.
How effective did you guys think that was? Because I thought in that moment, I thought the fact that for once we were just left to imagine what he might be seeing or hearing rather than being told. I feel like with stuff like this, obviously letting us imagine it is better than just like trying to sort of spill everything and tell us everything and make all the lore links yourself. So I'm really ambivalent about it supposedly knowing his name. That feels very cheap to me. But I think having a moment where it's just the actor having to communicate the cosmic awe or dread of something through their expressions alone, I think is a more effective direction for this sort of thing to go in. So I sort of mildly appreciated that, like independent of its context.
I like that, and it really plays to Ncuti's strengths, his ability to look, shocked, horrified, flabbergasted, to let tears droop out. That worked really well, I thought. I was even fine with it knowing his name. I mean, it was up in his head for a while.
And for once, we don't know why it is he cried. That's the thing. So like, usually when he cries, there's like an obvious reason. In this case, the fact that we didn't actually know what it is that was so bad he cried actually makes it like significantly quite effective in its own right.
Yeah.
It's kind of ambiguous, which I like. That's something the episode benefits from.
Strongly. It's something that the whole, if you want to call this like, I guess this is a series of episodes now. This is a sub-franchise. I mean, you could take this to fucking Big Finish and have a Midnight Entity box set now. It should play more in ambiguity.
What do you guys think of the visuals? Because the images in the episode that I sort of thought stuck out. Obviously, the well itself looked pretty cool, and the wall of Mercury forming behind Aliss, kind of meeting in the middle. Well, that was kind of an effective image. That's sort of it, though, basically.
Yeah.
I thought the well was kind of underplayed. I mean, it's a big yellow well, so it shouldn't be, but I mean, it just feels like it has less screen presence than, the similar structures from the Satan Pit.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the Mercury waterfall was pretty cool. I feel like that was kind of a fourth wall nudge, like, because if Aliss wasn't standing there in the way of the reflection, we would be basically staring directly at the camera, and that would be amusing. I think the exterior of the episode really demonstrate that no matter how much budget you throw at Doctor Who, it's always going to look like fucking Doctor Who. They're always going to film in the same gravel quarry they've been filming in since 1963. There's that shitty sci-fi screensaver overhead. When they approach the base, they do so in a shot that is very poorly composited. There's something wrong with, I don't know, maybe the scale of the background. I can't say exactly what it is, but it's immediately obvious that they are standing in front of like a picture of a space base. And once you realize that, it's then impossible to ignore that they are doing everything they can to avoid showing the big locked door. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, Chib was right all along. Just don't even show it. If it's going to come out like this, then just don't even show it.
I mean, that applies to the entity as well, doesn't it? We don't see would have been more effective than letting us see it in this episode.
Yeah.
Was there any music that you guys liked?
A few times in the episode, there was this music that's It's played in a few episodes, I think, of the revived series, but the soundtrack release of it is on the Series 4 soundtrack called Midnight, like the musical track called Midnight on the album, because it plays in Midnight a lot, which is it played at least 2 times in this episode. So that's a kind of another sequel link. We're reprising Marigold's music from Midnight as well. There was also, I don't know how to describe this, I can't sing it like you could, Gig. There was this annoying noise Murray kept doing. Which was like just getting on my back a couple of times. But there was this kind of swell noise that went through a lot of the episode I liked.
I thought that 15's theme kicking in when he comes up with the Mercury plan. I thought that the drums were not doing the scene any favors there. I feel like they should, maybe this is asking a lot, but I feel like they should be able to swing for like different arrangements or instrumentations of the theme music for moments like that. Because having this big rollicking like George of the Jungle bum bum dum bum bum dum thing coming in, just it didn't come off very well, I thought.
I thought dropping 15's theme there was sort of the ultimate moment it gives up on being any kind of sequel to Midnight at all, or being even really like it is when it just reverts to being a sort of default Doctor Who episode where the Doctor saves the day in some like heroic, quirky fashion. I mean, the whole part of the appeal of Midnight is that he emphatically does not do that. He is not capable of doing anything remotely like that. And I feel like in an episode that's supposedly like pushing the show a bit, having your sort of default Doctor Who clever plan, saves the day, plays theme, it's kind of you're admitting that you don't have the ambition to kind of do that. There was some music I liked elsewhere. I think during the scene where Belinda's first starting to get really paranoid about this entity that she can see, and they're all having this argument in that big room, there's some stuff with chopped up vocals kind of panning left and right. I mean, I like whenever Murray goes a bit electronic and abstract rather than fully orchestral, so I appreciate some of that.
Oh, I do have, that reminds me of something I did have to say about the visuals from before, is I like that they did a pretty good job of making it look like there were like the bunks that people were living in, they're like little rooms. They did a good job of making it look like there were actually lots of those, even though it's clearly just the same set being dressed again and again. The problem is they don't do anything with the audio to have it sound like people are talking from other rooms. So it sounds like everybody is standing in the exact same place having conversations while they're shouting back and forth about all the dead people. Again, it's a silly little technical thing, but it gives away how cheap the episode feels.
Yeah.
Despite the massive budget, despite all the sacrifices that we're making supposedly for this great amount of production value.
Actually, one of the shots I remember most from this episode is the very briefly random one that it feels like almost from a different episode. When Shia is running to go sacrifice herself in the well, we briefly see a flashback to her childhood.
That's great.
And the whole vibe of that shot is very different. Like, it's very deeply color graded, and it's feels kind of almost artistic and abstract in a way, where she's kind of running through this sort of ambiguous, vague sepia toned sort of hellscape on fire. That was a cool visual. You know, I like that. I appreciated that they tried to get us to care about Shia at the end there.
Yeah.
Maybe a little too hard. I don't know. But, you know, any sort of attention to the interiority of a character is appreciated.
Did you feel, as I've seen suggested elsewhere, did you feel that was like a rebuke of the Chibnall era
Ko-Shamus
pattern of having nameless red shirts sacrifice themselves for the Doctor, and she just walks off and lets it happen? It felt, I don't know so much about that, but it did strongly remind me of how the Moff era would treat characters like that. Like Lorna Bucket was who I was really thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was so much like not a conscious rebuke. Obviously having the Doctor futilely run after her and be like, no, don't do it. You know, that's more than Chib did with her Ko-Shamas. But, you know, and so that's like, you know, bottom of the barrel, bare minimum sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, at least there's sort of a justification for her being the one who has to sacrifice herself, I guess. Because she's the one who can actually shoot Belinda without killing her, because of very ostentatiously telegraphed, super great shot skills. I don't know, something about Shia as a character. You can kind of hear the gears creaking, like when she starts expounding on her backstory to like a conspicuous amount earlier on. It's like, okay, so she's going to be the important one then, right? She's going to be the one that we have to care about at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes it feels like having someone die at the end is like just the trick that you pull to try and make the episode feel deep and important and sad, even if it's not really that.
The part that I did feel was a rebuke to the Chib era was at the start when she says, "Hope is irrelevant." Also, there's a lot of talk about heartbeats in this episode, and nobody notices that the Doctor has too many.
It strikes me that if you were going to do an actual sequel to Midnight, where you're actually, even if you were just going to clone Midnight and write something where the exact same thing that happens in Midnight happens again to a different group of characters, a set of soldiers like this wouldn't be the worst idea for who to do it with. You could do a Midnight-like story with these people, and obviously, if you wanted to do like an Aliens to Midnight's Alien, then having people who are actually overtly violent rather than normal, and putting them in a pressure cooker situation where their instability is revealed and they all end up killing each other. Yeah, that would be an okay episode. You know, it would work.
Yeah, that's the parts of this episode that work are the parts where it sort of plays at that, like the creepiness of the base before everything's revealed, and we're finding out that half the people were shot to death and the other half were, you know, crumpled up.
Yeah, like the cruelty of Alice having had to kill her own friend, you know, in self-defense. Like that's a more kind of unsettling, disturbing premise than, oh no, there's a spooky blob thing, and if you walk behind me, it picks you up and drops you a few feet away.
God, what a misery.
How often has this happened, do you think? Like the show kind of lazily pillaging its back catalogue to try and make itself more exciting, and has it spelled the doom or demise of the show when it happened in the past? Like, can you think of like other times when it's been a bit like this? Like, obviously it was kind of late Classic Who, maybe like, oh, we're bringing back Totter's Lane, or like, I don't know. I feel like it's probably not. It's probably the sort of thing a show has survived before, but still, it's still not great.
Worries the deep.
Yeah, I don't know that it's always led to the end of the show, but it is always a sign of the show being in like dire straits. Well, either dire straits or, you know, a big anniversary coming up. And it's not the 75th for a few more years.
What was with that rule where, like, if two guys agree that shit's not right, they can just have a mutiny? They're just allowed to... Is that an actual thing? Like, if two people agree that they should do a mutiny and, like, depose the commanding officer, then it's just completely allowed. They can just assert themselves and take control.
It certainly would have made some of the, Troughton era base under sieges more entertaining. They just started turning on each other. I guess that is what happens in Warriors of the Deep, now that you bring it up. Kind of everything happens in Warriors of the Deep. By the way, can't wait to see the Disney budget being blown on America in the war between.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm stoked.
It's weird. I've gone from boycotting that to being like perversely excited about it, just because of how bad RT2 has been in several ways. I'm curious about how like just wrong and weird and stupid it can actually get. So despite myself, I'm becoming excited for it, especially with Pete McTighe, the hated, being involved. I kind of want it to be as evil and twisted and deranged as it can possibly be.
Oh, I think we're in for a treat I think you're in for the treat if that's what you're going for, yeah. Personally, I can't wait to hear RTD comparing War Between to Andor for the next 18 months.
Oh, there was an Andor comparison. Varada saying the spacesuit reminded her of like what the sort of thing Cinta would wear.
I don't think so, no. I am an actual expert at Star Wars, and Cinta wouldn't wear that. Wouldn't be caught dead dressed like a fucking late MCU era latex design.
Yeah, like it's more Star Trek Discovery than Star Wars, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like modern era Star Trek. What do you guys think of the idea, I guess the interpretation I've seen it put about, the nostalgia desperate aspect of this episode is actually makes it good. And it's actually important. Like it's the thematic core of this episode. It needed to be a midnight sequel because that's the entire thematic purpose of it. And actually it's an exploration of nostalgia and a critique of nostalgia or
it's
something.
Not.
Nothing is.
It's not.
That's not a thing that happens.
No, not at all. Not even a little bit.
No. If you want the Davies version of that, you want to go for The Journey's End, where the Doctor pointedly refuses to play nostalgia with Davros. Opposite of how it works out in The Magician's Apprentice. In this is just the show. It's not interested in making anything new using the basis of Midnight. Instead, it just wants to use the name to prop up a failed episode. It's not even like with Empire of Death. Yeah, might as well completely throw all the fucking praise out the window here. Empire of Death, Davies, clearly cared a lot about Pyramids of Mars, even if he got it wrong. Even if objectively he watched the show incorrectly, he still liked it and cared about it. And even though he wrote the characters wrong, he still strongly thought about it and tried to craft something. He wanted it to stand up, be remembered alongside Pyramids of Mars so desperately that he put fucking clips from Pyramids of Mars in it. And I know he does the same thing with Midnight here, so that's not a great comparison. I sort of got lost there. But this is just trying to rescue a failing script by stealing a name, really. It's not the same monster, it's not the same atmosphere, it's not the same setting. It really is just a name. And it's not even the name of the episode.
Yeah, I think there's something funny about looking at an episode that is blatantly trying to mine its own past for, attention and acclaim and excitement, and interpreting that as it actually being a metatextual story about the fact it's doing that. No, it's just doing that. It's the metatext is what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's not. You can't just. It's a bit. It's like you're kind of imploding on yourself if you try and kind of impute that to the episode itself. No, sometimes something is just doing a manifestly kind of self-indulgent, self-cannibalistic thing. The sort of the wonky metatext is not necessarily. It's not enough. Really, it doesn't amount to an actual story in itself.
And it doesn't have any engagement with nostalgia. It doesn't have any engagement with Midnight. What would the metatextual reading of it be in the context of nostalgia critique? Because there is none.
I get the idea supposedly that, like, because the supposed suspense around the Doctor trying to see what the entity is it kind of represents us trying to, like it represents our, or like RCD's relationship to his old good stories, and kind of the, like it's dramatizing our kind of struggle.
Like that thing you were joking about earlier about why did it work so much better back then? Yeah,
essentially, yeah. Like as much as that, that's how kind of it feels to me, like watching the episode. That doesn't mean it's actually adding anything to that conversation. It's not actually answering or kind of engaging with that question in a way that is meaningful. It's not really. It's not contributing to this, I'd say, quite pertinent question of, is the show actually like eating itself? It's just eating itself more.
Yeah, it's just hitting the spicy course.
Oh, I just want to say the Mrs. Flood cameo in this, possibly her worst one yet, specifically because the outfit she's in was so much like that one Susan Twist was wearing in Space Babies. Kind of facing the camera.
Yeah. Similar
kind of way. Like, oh dear. Just a real reminder of how, like even just in terms of imagery, how kind of barrel scraping we're at, and like how weak this is, like as a recurring like, arc thing again.
I guess really the only good thing I can say about this episode is that at least, I mean, this has got to be it in terms of like the worst possible way they could bring back like an old villain. They can't possibly top that this season, could they?
You know what? I'm not gonna comment. I'm gonna refrain from answering that question. I don't want to have to eat my words in some humiliating fashion.
Yeah.
I suppose I want to give one shout out, actually. There was someone on our favourite website, reddit.com, who was talking about the representation of deafness and sign language in this episode in the show. And one point they raised, which is this is a good example of the kind of thing that as hearers and like people who don't sign, we wouldn't even think about. They were comparing it to Before the Flood and that story and how the representation is a bit different. And one thing they picked up on is the fact that Rose Ailing Aliss, I think her name is, in this episode, the camera shows her signing, like it keeps her hands in the frame. So you can see her acting with her hands.
Yeah, I read about that.
And kind of a pitfall that you can fall into if you're, if a pitfall you can fall into if you're like shooting a show with kind of signing characters. If you don't show their hands, if they're just signing just out of frame and you're just keeping the focus on their face, you aren't actually showing their performance, like their acting.
Yeah.
You're just assuming their acting is entirely in the face. But no, like they are, like it is a different language, and it is a language that they use their body to express, right? So it's like, you want to actually include and show what they're doing, because it's a completely different way of communicating emotion. So yeah, I think it's worth kind of being aware of that, because that is an interesting, again, like it's something that got kind of crowbarred into the episode in a very late stage, but sometimes those are the things that actually add a redeeming aspect to an episode. Sometimes the thing that's not really part of the crap central premise, but kind of gets worked in later, can often be where the genuine creativity and interest comes in. Because it clearly, like, there was a genuine interest in getting this right. So, yeah, I think it's really worth appreciating.
Yeah. Yeah, that part I did kind of like.
And also he kind of, the Doctor tries to It Takes You Away her. Do you remember in It Takes You Away, where the Doctor starts writing stuff, or whatever it was? She starts trying to communicate in a way that the blind character can't see. So I think the Doctor writes messages on the ceiling or something. Yeah, I kind of like that the Doctor kind of tries to do that again with the deaf character in this episode, but gets called out on it. It was a funny little moment. Well, not funny, but,
And she calls him, I like that. Yeah. It was well written.
I've been trying for like 3 minutes to think of a claw pun, and I can't.
Clawing our way back from something. I don't know.
We need to get out claws.
Frankly, I'm terrified to see what kind of claw puns Davies comes up with.
Claws for concern.
The claw was abstract.
That closes us out on the well. Well, what did you... really? What did you think of the well? Listeners, what did you think of Mira's thoughts, my thoughts, Gig's thoughts on the well? Let us have it. What did you think? Thank you for listening. Off we go.